I'm Scott Hennon. Our next guest is Roscoe Streyle, state representative from Minot. We're going to talk a little Lignite today on the program. Roscoe, thanks for joining us.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you on the program. You know, Lignite has been a part of North Dakota's economic story and, job story and really energy export story for a long time, but sometimes it just does not get the attention that other industries do. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't. That's a really good question because that is absolutely true. You don't, other than when Obama was attacking via the EPA, now you're not hearing as much about the coal industry, although it's seen a renaissance, so to speak, across the nation. And what the president has done is awesome for our state and, frankly, for the entire country with the regulation reduction and what's going on there.
Yeah, I guess it's just a product of doing a lot and not looking for a lot of attention and just keeping your head down and going for it. 27.7 million tons of lignite produced in 2016, used by 7 power plants, and the nation's only lignite to synthetic natural gas plant. Happens right here, too. And affordable, reliable energy sold to 2 million customers in the upper Midwest. Send gas to 400,000 customers in the upper Midwest. So a lot of impact from it, but just a kind of done quietly. How about on the employment picture? What impresses you most about the labor that comes from the lignite industry, Roscoe?
Well, it's jobs, 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 I think. And then the other piece, too, the lignite puzzle is the base load power that it generates as opposed to the fraud that is wind. And the state receives, $100 million plus from various tax revenues in the coal industry, and as you know, there's thousands of jobs, 4,000 plus, with 8 to 10,000, 11,000 indirectly. So it's a huge industry in North Dakota, in particular in obviously the coal counties, Mercer, McLean, and Oliver. But if you think about the power that's generated, we generate as a state way more power than we use. So. North Dakota and the coal industry is critical, really, to the entire Midwest. When you look at the amount of power that's generated, and frankly, the nation, I believe it's about a third of the power is generated by coal in the nation, and rising as Trump takes the foot off the throat of the coal industry. I think you'll see that increase.
And we sort of take this for granted. No, we don't sort of. We do. I mean, we flip the switch and just expect it to be there. But reliable, affordable energy is not something that can be taken for granted. And you mentioned having to take the foot off the throat of the industry. I mean, it's been a battle to survive up against a regulatory force and elected leaders that openly are hostile to coal. Now that that's done, how do you see that impacting North Dakota? How less of a the jackbooted thug approach to the coal industry from Washington, D.C., reveal itself in North Dakota, Roscoe?
Well, I think you'll see, additional production in the years ahead. I think if you look at the United States in general, or even our state, one of the biggest drivers to growth in manufacturing and in various economic growth is energy costs. And with cheap, affordable, reliable energy, which is what coal provides, I think you could see this renaissance of manufacturing that Trump is pushing, reverberate through the nation and potentially North Dakota. So it's a huge deal. You look at China and India, they're building thousands of coal plants, yet, the fraud that is the Paris Accords is that we got out of, thankfully, didn't stop them from building it. So here we are, we'd be at a competitive disadvantage from our primary competitors had they not pulled out of the Paris Accords as well. So, you've got some huge decisions that were made by a president that's been extremely beneficial to North Dakota.
Another stat I think is pretty neat, especially when you consider the extreme environmentalists. I sometimes call them eco-terrorists, but the folks that are hostile towards coal because they say it harms the environment. We described a while ago how much lignite we produce here and that it goes to the 7 power plants and also to the Synfuels plant. And despite all that, North Dakota is one of 7 states, only 7, that meet all of the federal ambient air quality standards. And there's all kinds of awards that the mines in North Dakota have won for safety and reclamation and everything else. So we can lose the anti-environment argument, too, with that stat right there, can't we, Roscoe?
Exactly, and the fact that we created the Department of Environmental Quality, I think, will allow us to further shift some of the regulatory burden back to the states from the feds. The PSC does a great job at regulating versus what the EPA would do. So I think if we can continue the push to bring back some more states' rights, we know how to regulate. Obviously, if we're one of only 7 that meet the air quality standards, we're doing things right. We typically do things right in North Dakota. I think there's a huge opportunity in the coming years to take back more of the federal oversight and place it in the states, because we know what's best. The feds don't know what's best for North Dakota.
By the way, the state receives about $100 million in tax revenue from this industry every year. That's from an NDSU Agroeconomics Department study. The coal mines pay a severance tax on production. Power plants pay a conversion tax when they burn the coal to generate electricity. Mercer County, which is home to 3 power plants, the Synfuels plant, and 3 coal mines, gets about 75% of its tax revenue from the lignite industry. Just think about that. So Mercer, McLean, and Oliver County, collectively known as coal country, home to some of the highest wage jobs in the state and a ton of tax revenue that allows you to balance the budget every year, which is, of course, constitutionally mandated, but you need the revenue to do it when you're sitting in the state legislature. So it's a juggernaut, right, Roscoe?
Yeah, it's a key industry, and the legislature by and large is extremely supportive of the coal industry. And if you compare this to the tax giveaways and the federal giveaways to the wind industry, for example, which is the biggest threat, I think, to the coal industry, because they're given priority on the grid, and it's not a reliable source, and it doesn't help us maintain our base load. So, I think some of that needs to go away, and we need to stop. In fact, I think we should look at additional revenue sources through the wind industry, because of the fact that they're taking hundreds of millions of dollars in North Dakota, frankly, in those PTC credits. So, they're still under assault. Just because the regulatory burden is lifted a little bit, they're still under assault from some of the environmentals through the wind industry.
So based on what I hear you saying, you're not a fan of the wind energy because of the way it's the wind energy as it exists now, because of the way that it is subsidized, the federal, tax credit, or are you saying that tax credit or not, wind energy is a bad idea?
No, I think the tax credit is a terrible idea. They get paid just every time that thing's spinning, they're getting paid from the federal government. Well, that's not the case in any of the other industries. And you have the other impact, too, of destroying the landscape, I think. You drive down Highway 83 to Bismarck, and it's littered with wind turbines. You go north, Rugby. I think it's destroying the landscape in North Dakota, and people complain about the oil wells or the coal mines. Well, that's minor compared to what these are doing, and it's a direct result from federal intervention. And it goes back to let the states regulate and do what they think is best. And if you got rid of that production tax credit, you wouldn't hardly have any of those turbines sitting out there.
Interesting. And I believe it's set to expire, is it not? It's not going to. I can't remember if politically, just everybody's of the opinion that it will expire, or if there is actually it's set to expire. And while it normally would be renewed, it won't be renewed based on the political landscape. I forget which. Do you know?
It ratchets down. 17, it's 80% of the credit. 18, it's 60, and 19, it's 40. So they're still going to get it, but remember, anything that was built prior, they kept those 10-year commitments, so they get 10 years worth of credits. And now going forward, it'll ratchet down on new construction. So you're going to see the construction probably decline, but you still got a bunch of them, taking government money every time that thing's spinning. So
Interesting. All right. Fascinating conversation as always. Roscoe, good to chat with you, and thanks for your assessment of the lignite industry and your take also on the wind energy as it's currently lifted up by the federal tax credits. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Scott. Bye.
Roscoe Streyle with us on Energy Matters.